Hi, it's John. Welcome to my channel EV Intuition, where I'm helping you understand about electric vehicles. Recently, I went on vacation and I decided to rent an electric vehicle. And I ran into an issue that made my car renting experience a little less pleasant. So today, I wanted to inform you about the one thing that you should know prior to renting an electric vehicle. So let's get started. Before I begin today, I wanted to remind you that if you like the content of my channel, please subscribe and give me a like. Or if you have any comments, please send them to me also. Today, I'm talking about the one important thing that you need to know if you're planning to rent an electric vehicle. Now, I was recently on a trip and I was misinformed or misinterpreted what the agent at the car rental car counter told me in regards to how I should return the car as far as the state of charge of the vehicle and what charges I would occur if I didn't. Basically, I understood it that whatever charge level the car is at, you need to return it at the same charge level, or else you will incur a fee. And I wasn't notified at what level that car that I would be getting would be at prior to renting it at that counter. So I go into the car and it's at like 100%. And so I wanted to describe how difficult it is for you to return a car at 100%. Now, in the gas world, that's pretty typical, right? When I rented gas vehicles, my typical mode of operation was find a gas station on my way to the airport or near the airport, fill the car up, and return the car. Pretty easy. Many people do it that way. That way I didn't have to pay the company to refuel the car at premium prices. Well, let's take a look at that in the EV world. Now, in the EV world, there's two main issues about returning a car at 100%. The first one is, unlike gas stations, electric vehicle chargers are not all over the place. And in some cities, that EV charger may be quite a distance from the airport. So if you're planning to return that car, you might have to go a little out of your way to charge that vehicle prior to returning it to the car rental agency at the airport. And so you might have a charge of quite a bit less than 100% by the time you get to the airport, depending how far that charging location is. So that's the first thing. The second thing you got to be aware of is when you're approaching 100% state of charge at a charger, the speed of that charge is very slow, even if you're at a high-speed charger. That's just the characteristics of electric vehicle batteries today. You can go to a high-speed charger, and when you're at 10% state of charge, it's very fast on some vehicles. But once you get past 80%, it starts slowing down. And it could take upwards of an hour to charge just between 80 and 100%, depending on the vehicle. So you got to be aware of that. Did you save yourself enough time to charge the vehicle prior to returning it? So those are the two issues I ran into, and I was planning to return the car at the same state of charge as I got it at, which happened to be 100%, because I thought I would be charged a fee if I didn't. So I want to now get into what I looked up online as to what their policy was and how that compared to what I understood the agent telling me. So basically, I went online to find the return charging policy of electric vehicles for the car company that I rented from. Now, I rented from Dollar. Now, one of the things you got to know in regards to car rental companies in the United States is that there are three main car rental companies. They may have several names associated with it, but they're the same company. I call them the big three. It's also been referred to by other people as the big three. First of all, one of them is Hertz. Now, Hertz owns Hertz Rental Car, Dollar, and Thrifty. And I was obviously renting from the Hertz Corporation because I was going with dollar rent-a-car. The other two are Avis and Budget is the second one, and the third one, Enterprise, National, and Alamo. Those are the bulk of the car rental companies that you find in the United States. Now, there's one other one that's an international company that's up and coming in the U.S., and you might find them in many locations. So I'm also going to give you some information about them, and they're called Sixt, S-I-X-T. And I want to step you through the different return policies of these companies so that you are aware of it. Now, the other thing you got to keep in mind is that these things may change. In fact, the one with Dollar, I rented from Dollar about a year ago, and the policy has changed since that time. Here we are in early 2025. And I want to let you know the policy of these companies and give you my opinion on it, because this is the thing you should know prior to renting from any of these companies. Well, let's take a look at Hertz and Dollar and Thrifty. They basically have this notion of a charge purchase option. The charge purchase option gives you an option to say that, hey, I'm going to return the car at any state of charge. Now, state of charge is the battery level percentage, just like your cell phone has. What is the battery percentage that you return your car at? The charge purchasing option says I can return it at any level as long as it's above 10% or above, and I'll just pay a flat fee of $35 for them to recharge it. So I may not have to deal with any charging during my trip, depending on how many miles I go. If I return it at 20%, 12%, or even 50%, it's going to cost me $35. Now, you have an option to basically say I decline that particular option. Now, in that case, then you've got to return the vehicle at 70% state of charge. That's the confusion that I found, because I was told I had to return the car at the same level that I got it at, which was 100%. And I declined the CPO, and I thought I had to return it at 100%. But as this policy states, and this is right from their website, that all you have to do is return that vehicle with a state of charge of 70 or above. One of the exceptions they talk about is that if you got the car at a lower state of charge than 75%, you wouldn't have to worry about that. Now, a couple things. So if you accept the CPO and it's at 100% state of charge when you got it, and you return it at 50%, charge you $35. Now, there is one exception. If you return it at the same level that you got it at, then they will waive the $35 fee. There is a chance that if you select the CPO and return it at that level, you won't get charged anything. But if you decline it, you've got to return it at 70% or above. And I think this is pretty fair. And why do I think that is? Because if you go to a high-speed charger, I think you can go to between 75 and 80%. Let's say the charger's a distance away from the airport. You charge between 75 and 80%. Usually the charging speed's pretty decent still in that area. And by the time you get to the airport, you're still above 70%. That's a decent charging policy that I think they have. The one other thing that you got to keep in mind is that they have this undercharge fee. If you ever return the EV, which a charge level under 10%, then they're going to charge you an additional $25. Got to keep that in mind, that could be in addition to the $35 of the CPO. For example, if you chose the charge purchase option and returned it at 5%, you're going to get charged the $35 for the option and then another $25 for being under 10%. So I think Hertz, Dollar, and Thrifty do have a good policy. Now, the key is, do the agents know that? So you got to make sure you should know this, because I think the agent at the counter that I was at did not give me the correct information as to their policy. And if I knew this, all I would have had to do was return my car at 75% or so, just above 70%, and I'd be fine. But I tried to get as close to 100 as I could. Now let's look at another rental car agency, Avis and Budget. And I think theirs is very similar to the Hertz, Dollar, Thrifty. They have this statement that they will try to charge their vehicles to at least 70% at pickup. So when you pick up that vehicle, it should be above 70%. And what they expect you to do is to return the car with at least 70% state of charge. And if you don't, then you're going to be assessed a $35 fee. And that's, once again, since they have that percentage at 70%, I think that's pretty fair as far as electric vehicles go. You don't want to say return it 100% because that's very difficult to do. I like the fact that you can return it at above 70%. Now, they state that they're going to make sure that that vehicle is above 70%. Now, if they don't give you it above 70%, a lot of times they'll just waive any fee. Something to keep in mind, they should have it charged at least above 70% and higher, ideally, and you can return it at 70% without incurring any additional fees. And once again, they charge a low charge fee in addition. So if you returned your vehicle, let's say at 50% state of charge, you would get charged the charging fee of $35. But if you happen to return it at 5%, which is less than their low charge point of 10%, then you're going to be charged an additional $35. So it would cost you $70 to return it at something like 9% or below. So keep that in mind, that you don't want to return a car lower than 10% to these two companies, Avis Budget and Hertz Thrifty. Now let's take a look at the third largest company, and actually this is probably the biggest one in the US. It consists of Enterprise, National, and Alamo. And it's kind of interesting though. I went online, tried to look for it, and I actually went to their customer service website and even asked them the question. And basically the answer I got is that they don't have a standard policy and that their electric vehicle charge return policy depends on the location where you pick up your car. So I guess they have multiple different policies and it really depends on the location you're getting, which I think is a terrible thing because you may not know that policy prior to picking up that vehicle. And it may not be a fair one. It may be a difficult one. It may be an expensive one. Who knows? And so I find this kind of discouraging that a big company like Enterprise, National, and Alamo don't have a standard policy across the board. Keep that in mind if you go in that direction for renting an EV. Now, the last company that I'll talk about is Sixt. It's an international company that now has a presence in the United States. They've been here for probably started coming into the US over the last decade or so. I've seen them at many airports, so that's why I decided, well, I should probably look up their policy. Now, I don't really like their policy very well as far as electric vehicles come. And you can see why here. They basically say that you agree to return the vehicle at an 80% or higher state of charge. And they're saying they're going to give you your vehicle at that, and they want the vehicle at least by 80%. And once again, 80% is where the charging slows down quite a bit at the high-speed chargers. So this could cost you a lot of time. So I don't like the fact that they're rated up at 80%. I like the 70% that Hertz and Avis and their corresponding companies do. Keep in mind that Sixt is a little tighter on that. So you've got to have it at 80% or higher, or you're going to get charged the $35 recharging fee. And they also have a low charging fee, and their low charging fee is 20% state of charge. So if you're below 20%, then they're going to hit you up with another $20 fee. So notice the big difference between Sixt and the Hertz Avis companies. And it's a little tighter policy in regards to EV. It's not as consumer friendly. So I hope giving you this awareness will help you if you plan to use an electric vehicle at the next time you rent a car. Now, some people may ask, well, John, why would I even rent an EV? Well, that's a good question that you should ask yourself. I think there's several reasons why you might consider renting an EV. And I think the biggest one at the top may be cost savings. Now, what I've found a couple times that I've done rented a car, an electric vehicle, is that the cost of renting an EV has been pretty cheap. Just the overall cost per day has been pretty reasonable. And I think maybe this is because a lot of people are not renting EVs, because it is a little more difficult if you're not familiar with it. Keep that in mind. The cost of renting an electric vehicle could be cheaper or less expensive by day. But the bigger thing that's likely to happen is that the cost of recharging by electricity versus refueling a gas car is also a savings. Now when you start this really depends on where you're going to charge your vehicle. If you're charging at a high-speed charger, that difference may not be that great, okay? Meaning that savings, because the cost of high-speed charging is pretty significant compared to like charging at home. And so you've got to know where you're planning to charge, and are you really going to save that much by having an electric vehicle if the cost savings of recharging was your main reason for getting an electric vehicle. But I think there could be other reasons that you might want to rent an electric vehicle, and I think it's driving an EV. This is one of the things I really like, and I did a video on this. I like the quick, quiet, smooth acceleration of electric vehicles. And so you might like just the driving experience, and that's one of the reasons you'll get an EV versus a gas vehicle. The other reason might be maybe you really like the fact that EVs don't have greenhouse gas emissions like gas vehicles do, and so they're better for the environment. So that's why you're doing it. Or one of the reasons I do rent EVs is it gets me a chance to rent other electric vehicles that I don't own. Right? I own a Tesla. I've also have owned a Mustang Mach-E in the past, but I've now rented, I think, 4 different electric vehicles at car rental companies, so I get a feel for other electric vehicles, and that may sway me in future purchase decisions. So you may want to try an EV, but keep in mind that I think those are the only reasons you do it. If none of these are what you're looking for, EVs tend to be a little more work, just as I've stated. By going through the recharging policy, it may be a little more difficult to recharge, especially depending on what location you're renting from. So I hope you found this video informative, and know that if you're going to rent an EV, know that recharge policy of that company. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.